Hello, everyone. The description that you just heard from Nikki applies to my wife, actually, but I will be giving the talk instead. Describing any culture is impossible within only 15 minutes. However, I will give it a shot, unless I decide to change my mind and talk to you about bananas instead. That is because 95% of my DNA is the same as that of chimps, and bananas are their favorite fruit. So I feel qualified to talk about that. Apparently, the picture proves that too. However, I did spend 20 years in the Valley, Silicon Valley, as a software engineer, a student, and I may be able to share some insights with you from Silicon Valley, specifically insights that could be helpful to Greek entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday engineers who want to plant the seeds for Greece's rebirth after the crisis. Some chimps will do anything for a banana, but peanuts do not motivate them very well. Similarly, software engineers have a salary, benefits, the occasional bonus, but really what motivates us is equity. Equity is usually in the form of stock, which is partial ownership in the company we work for. However, equity can take other forms, such as stock options, which is the right to buy stock at a low price, or other more creative means, such as restricted stock units, profit sharing, and whatnot. Regardless of the mechanics, however, equity really means that if my work helps the company become successful and I play a critical role, then I will reap substantial monetary rewards. So substantial, in fact, that by comparison, my salary is just peanuts. Now, every engineer in the Valley, or almost every, receives equity. But the amount each one receives varies a lot. The amount will depend on the job responsibilities, the experience they have, what they bring into the company, the job responsibilities they had before in the prior employer, and of course, one-to-one negotiating between engineer and firm, without the meddling of unions. How is the company protected in case the engineer gets the equity and then leaves the next day? Well, the answer is a vesting plan. A vesting plan works as follows. If I join a company and I leave within the first year after me joining, then I lose all my equity. If I stay for 4 years or 5 for some companies or more, then I get to keep all my equity. And if I stay some amount of time in between, I only retain a portion of it. What happens if I stay at my firm, the firm is successful, I do well, and over time, I want to have a higher salary and more equity? In the traditional company, which is represented on the pyramid on the left, there is a single hierarchy. VPs at the top, managers of managers below them, and all the way down to newbies or entry-level managers. So the only choice I have as an engineer is to become a manager and eventually a manager of managers. However, engineering and management skills are very distinct. So being a good engineer doesn't mean I will make a good manager. So why incentivize gifted engineers to stop applying their core talent for the purpose of more rewards? This is why successful startups, as they grow, they create two hierarchies. The one on the left is the traditional one, the familiar management structure, and the one on the right is an engineering-only hierarchy. In this one, at the top, instead of VPs, we have the gurus, the Yodas, the domain experts, the ones that other engineers consult when they seek help for complex technical problems. It's a hierarchy of skill. In both cases, the higher up you go in the hierarchy, the higher the compensation. However, across the two hierarchies, if you're on the same tier, be it a manager on the left or an engineer on the right, your compensation is fairly similar. Every engineer in the second hierarchy on the right still reports to a manager on the left for career guidance and promotions. What you don't see on this chart, by the way, is the CEO, and he's the one who holds the one ring that rules them all and in the network binds them. Now, what makes that hierarchy, that dual hierarchy structure work? It's 3 reasons, and I'll go over each one of them. The first is that us engineers really like what we do. Or in other words, we go bananas over problem solving. For us, it's hard work, but it's also intense playtime. We do it a lot, we learn to do it well. And as a result, it is best for the company to incentivize us to reach Gladwell's 10,000-hour mark and become phenomenal engineers. The second reason is that we enjoy showing off our work to other engineers and engaging in group problem solving. This helps with mentorship and also helps organically move engineers up the hierarchy that you see on the right. Although seniority is not typically a factor in promotions in the engineering hierarchy, experience usually does lead to higher promotions. That oddly makes senior engineers have gray hair, which is similar to leading gorillas who are silverbacks. The third reason is that we are really happy to be what we are, namely geeks and nerds. There is an accomplished woman named Temple Grandin who has Asperger's syndrome, which is a form of autism. She has made the observation that the Valley is chock full of people with mild forms of autism. And I think she's more right than wrong. She's referring to skills like obsessing over detail, which I do every night when I write code, or discomfort in social settings, which is exactly what I'm experiencing now. Given this kind of engineer mentality or character traits, it takes a very special person, an engineering manager, to organize, guide, and control engineers. It's the person that needs to keep order in the zoo and prevent a mayhem like the one you saw in the movie Planet of the Apes, where an extremely intelligent chimp guides a tribe of other primates to take over San Francisco. I certainly interpreted that movie as an allegory for the Valley. So I'll sum up the first lesson I wanted to share with you, and I hope you'll retain when you leave today. Engineers want a stake in the companies they work for. We do best over time if we are incentivized to do what we like, better and better. We usually play well with other engineers, and engineering managers are as important to the company as the engineers themselves. So far, of course, I have assumed that the startup is successful. However, in reality, most startups fail. And when I say most, I mean 90% or more. Of the ones that do survive, most barely are able to recoup their investment. Very, very few are the Google, Facebook, and Apple stories that consume the attention of the media. You don't hear about the failures. So risk-taking is a core part of Silicon Valley culture. Why is it that we take such risks as engineers? I already gave you the first reason, greed. We will just want to reap the rewards that should come should the venture be successful. But there's a second reason, and that is the safety net that protects us in the case of failure, meaning if the startup has to close its doors. I will share with you the 3.5 forms of that safety net. The half form refers to a special case of people who may not be similar to your situation. The first form of the safety net is that failure does not send me to the poorhouse, meaning that in most countries, to start a company, you have to use your personal assets, real assets, as collateral to a bank in order to get a secured loan. However, in the Valley, there are wealthy individuals such as angel investors and investment firms specializing in risk capital called venture capitalists, and they provide funds, seed funds, to new ventures, regardless, by the way, of the nationality, religion, or other personal beliefs of the founders. They provide not only money, but also guidance, know-how, and for the most revered venture capitalists, the backing of their reputation, so that a small firm can talk to a big firm and actually have someone listen to you. This means that in the end, the venture capitalist gets equity in your firm, so you're diluted. But that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because if the startup fails, you would have lost only your time, the investor would have lost their money, and you would still have over your head the banana leaves that form a roof of the house. The second element of the safety net, or the second form of the safety net, is that the cultural perception that you encounter in the Valley, that risk and failure are just a step in the ladder to success. Failure really is a sign of having courage and being willing to take a risk. Failure is not permanently etched on my forehead, marking me with a big L as a loser. It's a successful attempt. It's a learning lesson. It is like the past girlfriends I've had and all the failed relationships in my life. They prepared me so that eventually I would be the best husband I can be with my wife. In short, if I step on a banana peel and fall, I just get up, clean up, and move on. The third form of the safety net in the Valley is probably the most important one, and it is that the network of senior engineers and engineers in general is fairly small and fairly tight. This means that my reputation is my safety net. If I do good work at a company, then people will notice it, and they will respect it. And if the startup fails, and we all are looking for a job at the same time, and one of the other engineers finds a job before me, they might seek me out and try to hire me to join their firm. Also, engineers from prior collaborations will ask me to join them when they find out that I'm available. Of course, this presupposes a culture of meritocracy, where if I'm good, I will find a job. Note that reputation building starts before your career. It starts when you're at school, when you join collaborative projects, and when you do internships. The 3.5 point is applicable only to young graduates or recent graduates, or to those that do not have any other unavoidable large regular expenses like medical bills or supporting elderly parents. And it's simply this. Salaries and cash compensation in the Valley is good. It's more than you need. Save most of it so that when a rainy day comes along, you have something to fall back on a soft landing, and have the time to find a job that you really like. So this multi-form safety net has an odd consequence that is worth noting, and that is that most engineers are not necessarily loyal. They can be, many are, but they don't have to be. That is because income security doesn't come from a stable job. It comes from a supportive setting, legal and financial, a cultural setting, the reputation that you have built, and financial prudence. So like a bonobo monkey, an engineer will have sex with any partner who brings him the biggest bunch of bananas. Some job stability is essential because we have to demonstrate a reputation of commitment to a project and carry through. But in fast-paced high tech, that can be within 2 or 3 years usually. Companies encourage loyalty, but as far as the Valley goes in general, it is not necessarily a good thing. The Valley benefits from a constant flow of ideas, and that comes about with engineers going from company to company, rejoining in different groupings. Even for the individual engineer, to stay with a single firm for a very long time is risky because all their equity is in a single undiversified basket. In other words, the biggest risk is not taking any risk, and then therefore reaching over-dependence on a single firm and stagnation. Startups like this loyalty, in fact, because they can poach or steal the best engineers from bigger firms. But of course, when the startup grows, it stops liking this loyalty. It prefers loyalty because it can keep its best engineers rather than lose them to other firms. So there's a little bit of a hypocrisy going on, but it's a natural counterweight to the promiscuity of the engineers. So this is the second lesson I want you to take with you. Failure doesn't destroy or stain entrepreneurs. Reputation is the most important safety net that I have, and I will not miss an income on which I chose to not become dependent. Also, I am reasonably promiscuous with my employers, not my wife. Hi, honey. So how do you sum up the Silicon Valley culture? Is it capitalism? In some ways, yes, it is. On the other hand, the passion with which engineers code exhibits a connection to the result of one's labor, which sounds exactly like Marxism. And the fact that so many employees, engineers for the most part, own equity in their employer sounds like socialism. What about the pursuit of individual rewards and promiscuity? That's a hallmark of Ayn Rand's objectivism. And so it's best to really not put a single label and say it's none of the above. What about Greece? Greece cannot create a Valley ecosystem. A Valley ecosystem has a lot of parts. It has venture capitalists. It has a place like Stanford University. It has a workforce that is unmatched in depth, breadth, and cultural diversity. If Greece were to start now, it's already 40 years behind in a globalized space. The race is lost. But Greece can be a satellite and remote participant, however, because it has strong engineering talent and innovation and creativity. Unfortunately, directed mostly to tax fraud right now. And I'm not talking about US firms creating satellite offices in Greece. I'm talking about Greek startups working with US investors and vice versa. That can happen. However, successful collaborations presuppose a common culture. This means that Greek engineers must understand how the valley works and share that mentality. And to do that, you need to have engineers that have worked on site in the valley through internships or full-time, maybe for a few years, capital moving back and forth, or maybe even students having spent a semester abroad, or Greek professors collaborating with American schools. In the longer term, what I hope to see is Greek companies adopting several of the cultural elements I shared earlier. I want to see Greek companies give stock to employees, and also employees ask for, appreciate, and willingly reduce their salary to take stock, especially at a time when you have a crisis and the company needs the cash. I also want to see the state and unions not interfere with this trade-off. At the family level, I want to see parents encourage their children to start companies instead of becoming civil sector employees. I want them to pursue their passions rather than committing at the far too young age of 18 to a supposedly safe profession like a lawyer or a doctor. Not that there is anything wrong with those, don't sue me. To paraphrase the 80s band Bananarama, find your Venus, find your fire, find your desire. So some have said that Greece is the last communist state in Europe. I actually disagree with that in the sense that the valley really defies labels. Labels are dangerous. They limit one's own potential. So I will share with you 3 small, definitely poetic, and definitely tenuous examples of how I see the valley in Greece converging in the fullness of time, whenever that is. The first one is here. In the center, top, and on the left, you see graffiti from the walls of Athens buildings downtown. On the right and the bottom, you see pictures from Facebook. This is also graffiti. Facebook's walls are decorated largely with employee-authored graffiti. Both are indicative of a youth culture that has the energy and a desire to share and wish to mold their environment to something that will inspire them. The human condition transcends labels. Nikos Kazantzakis wrote in his spiritual exercises, Askitiki, I do not hope for anything, I do not fear anything, I am free. As you probably know, it's also on his tombstone. Nikos Kazantzakis was of a leftist political persuasion, quite the opposite of Ayn Rand's objectivism, which is often seen as the underpinning of unabashed capitalism. And yet in her own book, written around the same time, The Fountainhead, she defined freedom as to ask nothing, to expect nothing, to depend on nothing. I will leave you with this picture, which is also graffiti from Facebook's walls. I did not write it, although it was a TEDx speaker who did. It is Kavafis Ithaka, which describes Odysseus' journey and inspires Facebook employees in their quest to build a better company and to go boldly where no one has gone before. Because isn't, after all, Odysseus the most famous engineer, tinkerer, and hacker? And wasn't he also a prankster who monkeyed around? Thank you.